Welcome. Thank you, Aaron. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for giving up what will probably be most likely 75 minutes of your afternoon. So we really appreciate that you're here. This is parent meeting number 3 out of 6, and the first 2 last night went really well. And we are going to pack an awful lot into the next 60 to 75 minutes. So we're going to get started right away. Go ahead, Mrs. Landing. Let's do that first slide. So first of all, thank you so much for your time. Again, we had over 2,000 questions submitted over the last 72 hours. Those questions coming from parents as well as faculty and staff really were centered around 3 different themes. There was testing and tracing, cleaning, masking and distancing, and also our instructional models, remote and hybrid. We're going to break this meeting up into those 3 themes. We're going to start with instruction, go to testing, and then end with cleaning and masking. After we're done talking about each theme, there's about 3 slides per theme. We're going to open it up for you to ask some questions, and you'll use the raise your hand feature. And we'll probably have time for maybe 5 or 6 questions after each theme. So our emergency response team, we've been meeting since the pandemic began, which was in early March. And we continue to get guidance from the state, DOH, as well as the Monroe County DOH, the Department of Health, on a daily basis. So that's the caveat. My answers today are based on our latest information, but I might come back in a week or so and say, you know what, I gave this answer, but now it's no longer valid because we have to follow this type of guidance. And there'll also be questions that you may ask that I have no answer because we're still trying to work on it. So with those caveats in mind and with those 3 themes in mind, let's go to the next slide. And we'll talk about the guidelines for today. We are recording this. The first 2 meetings from last night are already, or from yesterday, are already on our website. And we'll continue to do that. This way, in case you want to go back and revisit a different theme because you were zoning out or your kids were driving you crazy, you can do that. And we're going to use the raise the hand feature when we get to that part, when we get to that portion after each theme. Please stay on mute. The background noise sort of drives everybody else crazy. I'm sure all of us know that by now because we've probably all been doing virtual meetings for the last 5 months or so. And the last bullet is probably the most important one. So we're all sort of in the same boat. We're feeling anxious, probably more than a little bit stressed out, fatigued, frustrated. We want some answers. We want to go back to normal. And we're all feeling the same way. Parents, kids, staff, faculty, superintendents. But we also know that we're all doing our best. And I will do my best to give you the best answers I can give you. And to try to keep maintaining our communication with you on a weekly basis. But just realize that my answers may not make you happy. Somebody may ask a question or express an opinion that you may totally disagree with. And that's okay. We're all just doing our best to get through this. And remember that kindness goes a long, long way. So with that in mind, let's get started. So we have a few team members from the district on this call or on this meeting. Obviously, I'm Carmen. Brian Neenan is our deputy superintendent. Our chief financial officer is Brian Freeman. He's on the call along with Blaine Cunningham. Blaine is our expert on operations and buildings and grounds. For instruction and student services, we have Colleen Armstrong. She's our executive director for student services. So think about special education services, 504s, things like that. Erin Land is here. She's our director of elementary education. Dave Swinson is here. He's our assistant superintendent for HR. And he's here in case any HR questions pop up or in case any of you get inspired enough to perhaps want to drive a bus. That'd be awesome. Building administration, Mark Schichtel is here from the elementary. He's the principal of DeWitt. Jim Bear, principal of Spry. Glenn Weedorf, principal of Thomas. And then for our tech questions, we have our co-directors of instructional technology, Brian Zimmer and Joe Montemero. So those are the players that are on the call, and we can get started. You know those themes. We're going to start with instructional models first. So go ahead to that first model slide. So let's start with 100% remote. So 100% remote, obviously the students are doing school from their home or from grandma's house or whatever it's going to be, but they're not entering a building. They're going to have their devices from school. Their attendance is required. They're involved in a school. They are a student within it's a remote building, but attendance is required. There'll be grades, there'll be assignments, all that stuff, just like regular school. IEP programs and services, they're also provided. And I'm going to have Colleen chime in a moment to discuss that a little bit more, because we've got that handled. And students are going to opt in for a semester at a time. So why a semester at a time? Well, it's because if we were to take a group of remote students, and if they were to switch in and out, once they come into the building, what happens is it alters our staffing, and then if they're entering a classroom, it may also alter spacing. So we're going to staff to make sure that we have 6 feet, the 6-foot distance requirement. And if we have a bunch of remote students coming in at different times, it's really hard to staff for that. Now, going the other way from hybrid to remote, that's the last bullet, that's a little bit easier to accommodate, because once you go to remote, there is no distancing requirement. So it's much easier to accommodate that. The tricky part is if you're an in-person hybrid student and you have a lot of services like speech or OT, PT, special ed, and you want to go remote, it might just take us some time to sort of get that scheduled. But hybrid to remote is much easier than the other way around. So those of you who sign up for remote, you're signing up until end of January. That's the end of this first semester. So what does it look like at the elementary level? 100% remote. A child is not entering a building. So they will be assigned an AM time or an AM class teacher, or they'll be assigned into the PM. Very similar to what happened last week for all, when we grouped our kids into AM or PM sessions. So they will receive live instruction through Google Meet with their teacher. It'll be a Webster teacher. It may not be somebody from their building, but it'll be a Webster teacher, and that will last about 2 hours per day. The 3 blocks that will happen during that live instruction will be ELA, math, and social emotional learning. So the social emotional learning includes morning meeting, the care attributes, really making those connections. Before I go to the next bullet, I'm sure one of the top questions earlier may not have come in the last 72 hours, but certainly it was when we first put out this model, was why is it only 2 hours? So let me explain that. Typically our half day is 2.5 hours. That's the way it's always been, 2.5. We know that our arrival and our dismissal are going to have to be extended because so many parents are going to be driving their students, their children, back and forth from school. According to the survey that many of you have already filled out, I think close to 5,000 now, 44% of you are saying that you don't need any transportation. So we have to build in time at the beginning and at the end of the day. So that's why it's 2 hours. We hope as arrival and dismissal become more efficient, and we have this really great app that we're going to be using that really will help things. But until we really figure out the efficiencies, it's going to be at 2 hours, but we hope eventually we might be able to get up to 2:15 or 2:20. So what happens in the opposite half of the day? Well, that part of the day will mostly be asynchronous or on demand. So the students will be able to look at modules that are not live instruction, but they might be modules on social studies. It might be an assignment from the teacher or typing. There's a couple programs or services called Raz Kids and the math app that we use as well. Art and music will also be provided. It most likely won't be live. It could be occasionally, but we'll have some art and music pieces from our own teachers that you'll be able to grab on demand. So, so that's that second half of the day. So every student in this model every day will have a blend of live interaction with their teacher, independent work time. They'll get a lunch break, obviously, and they'll have regular breaks as well. But that's what their day will look like. AM or PM, 2 hours, live, 3 blocks, and then some independent work. So what does it look like at the secondary level? Much different here. So every one of our students, 612, receives a schedule that is 8 periods long. It's the traditional 8-period schedule that most of us had in high school and maybe middle school, right? Where you see it's what we're used to. And so you have an 8-period schedule. The periods are between 40 and 44 minutes long. And the way this will work is on odd calendar days. So October 1st, October 3rd, October 5th, you get the idea. The students will have live classes during their odd periods. So 1, 3, 5, 7. I'm going to meet with my teacher live for the full 40 to 44 minutes. The opposite blocks, or the even blocks on that particular day, are not mandatory. Okay, the other 4 were. So on an odd day, I've got to see my teacher for 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay, because that's my class, and they're expecting me, and attendance is mandatory. But the even numbers, the even blocks, I'd be able to pop in maybe for some extra help. Maybe I have a question on a homework assignment that I got the day before. There will be times that maybe even those blocks might be mandatory. I used to be a science teacher, an AP biology teacher, and so I could see myself saying, all right, yeah, I know you're supposed to see me on block 1, but block 2, my block 2 students, you have to come in. I need to see you because we have to finish this lab up. But anyway, and then on the even calendar days, I'm going to hit my other half of my schedule, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 1, 3, 5, 7 on odds, 2, 4, 6, 8 on evens. And then the teachers are definitely available during the opposite blocks. So every day, a student is going to have 4 blocks of live classes, 4 blocks of check-ins if they need to. So there will be some independent work. And remember that every day, a student has a lunch period, and they probably have a study hall as well. So they're going to have some breaks in there. In their virtual schedule. So we did it this way because we knew that it just isn't healthy to be on Zoom, or actually on Google Meet, every single hour for 6.5 hours. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for the adults, and it's not healthy for our kids either. So all right, so that's remote. So let's say that your children are coming to school for the hybrid model, for the in-person, face-to-face model. What does that look like? For the elementary, it's similar to the remote. The setup is similar. There's an AM group and there's a PM group. It's the same 3 blocks of instruction. It's ELA, math, and social emotional learning blocks. And then when they go home, or before they come to school, maybe they're a PM student, that half of the day is on demand. It's that asynchronous piece. There are assignments from the teachers. There's some, there might be a typing module that they can do. Now for elementary hybrid students, we're thinking right now that art and music will be virtual. So they'll be able to have some virtual live time with their art and music teachers. And that's how they'll get that content, the art and music. PE will most likely be done 1 day a week for 25 minutes. But art and music, virtual, PE in person, 1 day a week. So again, just like for the remote students, every day for our hybrid kids, it'll be a blend of live in-person classes and then some independent work time lunch breaks, and they can pull down any kind of on-demand module that they need to pull down. Secondary, our secondary students will be attending live classes 2 days a week, either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And they will have they'll run through their entire 8-period schedule and 40 to 44 minutes apiece, lunch, study hall, whatever it's going to be. And then on Wednesdays, they will run through their 8 periods again. It'll be remotely, and there'll be mini classes. They'll be 25 minutes long, again, to reduce that screen fatigue. So in essence, they're going to see their teacher 3 days a week. And we did a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday break. That's the way we did the cohorts. It was because we didn't want more than 48 hours to go by without a student seeing their teacher, whether it's in person or whether it was on the mini classes on Wednesdays. So and that's the reason why we did that. We wanted what it seems like frequent contact with their teacher, at least every other day or so. So they will have independent work on the 2 other days. They're still learning, right? They're not taking a break because they're going to have homework. They're going to have independent time, independent work to do. There may be opportunities for them to receive some extra help, maybe from a teaching assistant, or maybe by pulling down an on-demand module from the teacher, because the teachers will be planning for those on-demand pieces. So it's not as though, they're still in school. I know they're home, but they are still going to be accessing different pieces of their instructional program during those off days. So what does the schedule actually look like? This is our last slide, I think, before we open it up to you guys. Yeah, this is our last slide. So you can see on the left, it's high school and middle school. Those are the bell schedules. And you can see that the classes are between 40 and 44 minutes. They still go 8:45 to 3:15, just like last year. You can see on the right-hand side, that's their Wednesday schedule that starts at 11 and ends at 2:55. They're all 25-minute classes. And remember, one of those classes is going to be their lunch break as well. All right, so I've talked for a while. We are going to open this up for a few questions. So use your raise the hand feature, and we'll try to get through at least 5 or 6 of them.
Sam Scorzone has our first question.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for pulling this together. I have a question on the kindergarten class and recess. I see in the notes that the kids will have recess. How long will that be? How often, and how will proper measures be enforced?
Sam, that's a great question. It really depends on the teacher. I can't imagine at recess at kindergarten. I could see some type of play activity happening probably every day, whether it's inside or outside. And when we get to the masking portion, I would imagine that most of our students, especially at the elementary level, because they're only there for 2 hours, most of our students will probably have their masks on at all times. It may not, they may not be able to be 6 feet apart at all times, but certainly the masking will probably still happen there. But I think that the recess piece, it is teacher discretion. But for kindergarten especially, I know that most of our kindergarten teachers really value the play-based learning, so that'll be important. Thanks.
Next question is from Lindsay Rykovic.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, I'm just wondering, I put a request in to switch my son from PM to AM because I can't find childcare the opposite times. When will we find out if that's been approved or not, so that we can make other arrangements?
So Lindsay, the hope is either today or tomorrow that you'd be able to hear before you make your decision by Wednesday. And it might actually bleed into Wednesday, but we can certainly cut you some slack. Don't worry about that, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Next question is from Lindsay Bogaz.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi. So my question is, I know that this is probably a little bit more developed than when we went on March.
Yes,
Um,
a different world.
yes, but my concern is, so when they're learning something new, I'm assuming if they're hybrid or coming into class, they're going to have 2 hours where they're focusing on instruction. So when they come home and then there's questions, instead of having the teacher present to kind of help them through the independent work, I'm not available. I'm a teacher myself, and I've got my own set of stuff to do. So I don't have time to teach them. Is there going to be opportunities throughout the day when they're home to be in communication with the teacher?
No, there won't be, to tell you the truth, because the teachers are teaching that second part of the day. So let's say that your child is in the morning.
Yeah.
The afternoon piece, the teachers are back teaching the afternoon group. So then it's similar to what I would imagine that your students do for you as you're a teacher. If there are questions, they'll either email you, whatever it's going to be, and then sort of handle it from there. But I don't want you guys to freak out about, oh, there are these deadlines for homework, or this big test is coming up. There will be an incredible amount of flexibility from classroom teachers, especially at the elementary level.
Okay.
Okay. Next question.
Next question is from Scott Dahl.
Hi,
Hello,
Scott.
can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Scott.
Excellent. It's the first time I've used Zoom on my phone, so.
Okay.
So, we had a couple of concerns about the group 2 kids, coming in on Tuesday, Friday. It seems like, but I guess we'll get to that when we get to the safety concerns, how it's being sanitized on the weekends and
we will.
Wednesdays.
Yep.
So, we're a little concerned about our daughter coming in on the second day after the sanitizing each time. So we're thinking about going fully online as opposed to group 2. But my question is, she does have 2 rather unique classes in architecture and ceramics 2. And I do not see how those would work online.
Yeah, Scott, I'm sorry. I can't answer that one because I don't know that either. I don't know how those 2 particular classes will be offered online. Not that they won't be offered. I'm not sure. We just haven't gotten that far with those, because there are definitely going to be some classes that are going to be tough to teach remotely. But I sorry, can't answer that question.
No, I hear you. I'm a teacher myself, probably going to
Okay.
go hybrid. But so I guess my question would be, would there be an opportunity for her to go fully online, but to go in live for those 2 classes?
I don't know. That's a great question. We haven't had that request before. Don't know. I don't want to speak for Mr. Weedor, who's online here as a high school principal. But I don't know the answer to that one, Scott. Sorry, I don't know any answers to any of your questions, but I'll make up for it when we get to the cleaning part, okay?
Sure. Do you think somebody could get back to me? I've sent a couple of emails to folks, and last Thursday, honestly, I hadn't even gotten a reply from anyone. So
yeah, okay.
I was hoping someone could at least, pass that along to the right person to maybe
Scott,
address that.
Which high school does your daughter attend?
Webster Schrader.
Schrader. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure that Mr. Benz or one of his APs will get back to you. We still don't have an answer for you, but at least they can get back to you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Next.
Carrie Barone.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, for fully virtual, specifically the middle school, on those periods that they are participating live Google Meets, are they joining a class that's happening in person, or will they have their own separate little cohort that's fully online?
So Carrie, you're saying that the kids that are totally remote, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, they have a completely different staff. It's like a completely different school.
Okay, so they're not joining their peers.
They are not.
Okay,
They're
so
not.
the Wednesday mini sessions have nothing to do with them at that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have been able to
Nope, that's perfect.
delineate that before. Thank you. Next.
Tina Lilly.
Okay.
Hi there.
Hi,
I
Tina.
have a question about Google Meets. My son has been doing summer program virtually, and the quality has been pretty terrible. Everything, the sound quality is bad, and when you put up a video for them to watch, it lags terribly. And I was just wondering if that will be how you expect that to be better during the school year.
Mr. Zimmer, are you on?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the things we'll want to do, Kelly, is let's take a look at your son's Chromebook. I can connect with you after if you want to just shoot me a message. Normally that's not the case, so I'm just wondering. There could be a bunch of different things going on, and let's figure out what it is, and we'll address it pretty quickly for you.
Okay, it's definitely the entire class that's having trouble. The teacher notices it, the other classmates notice
Okay.
it. It's not just a one-person thing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things. Google's doing a lot of updates right now too, which is causing some of it as well.
Okay.
But let's take a look, and we can connect offline.
Okay,
Thanks, Tina.
thanks.
The screen name is Amanda's iPhone.
Oh,
Hi, Amanda.
hi. First, I just want to say thank you for everything you guys have done. I know it's a crazy time, and we at the Cannon household really appreciate everything.
Thanks.
So it's just kind of a two-part question, but related. So we are hybrid. If our kids say have just the common cold, and so they need to be out, do they have to have any kind of doctor's note saying they're set to come back? And the second part of it is if we were to have to travel out of state to a state that you need to quarantine when you come back, does that impact their place in the classroom? Would we have to then make them a virtual student, or could they stay hybrid?
So the common cold question, that's a good one. Most likely they're not going to need a doctor's note for that.
Okay.
The pediatricians within our area are really trying to work together to come up with a common flow chart.
Okay.
And that's still being developed. That's a great question though, because we're all going to have colds by the end of September.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so your other question, yeah, you're right. You'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks. You would not go virtual. We would not kick your child out to the remote team, because that's like a different school. So we wouldn't do that. So
Right.
We would just be working with your child's teachers to make sure that they get the work and that they have the support that they need. So it's similar to if your child was diagnosed with like mono and they were going to be out for 3 weeks. And it's like, okay, you know what? We'll work on what we need to work on. So does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
That's great.
Miss Land, 2 more.
Carrie Bogert.
Hey, my question is regarding the EMC.
Carrie, how are you?
Tina, good. How are you?
Carrie's one of my former students from a long time ago. So hi, Carrie.
Hi. Well, I'm asking for my daughter who was accepted to the New Visions medical program, and I imagine they're not going to have the clinical stuff in the hospital for the first semester. But does the hybrid and the remote learning take into account that half her classes may be with EMCC?
Yes. So we just heard from EMCC yesterday, I think, Mr. Neenan, right? Or something like that, whatever, either yesterday or Saturday. So they're going to follow our schedule. Every school district in Monroe County that I know of, we're all using Wednesday as a remote day.
Mm-hmm.
EMCC is going to, if your daughter's in the Monday, Thursday, she's going to have live classes Monday, Thursday at EMCC, and then remote on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. All right. Thanks.
One more, Miss Land.
Sure. Mike Donaldson.
Hello. I was just wondering about, for the fully remote learning, what are we going to do about physical education?
So PE will be offered. I shouldn't say it won't be live. We're still working on that part, but we do think we're going to have a blend of live, drop-ins, as well as on-demand sessions as well.
Okay.
but it will, right now, we will be offering it.
I just didn't notice it on the schedule, so I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, you bet. All right, so I know that many of you still had your hands raised. That looks like 16 of you raised your hand. And don't worry that we didn't get to you. You have two modes of getting your questions answered. One, we're going to send you a feedback form right after this session is done in about 45 minutes. And you can send in your question that way. We can add it to our FAQ. You can also email me directly, and I'll try to get back to you within 24 hours, either myself or one of the experts on this call. Okay? So, in the interest of time, we want to go to the next theme. The next theme is testing, screening, and contact tracing. So the number one question was from all parent sessions, from all 6, was what happens with a positive test? And we're going to get to that on the second slide. But first, we're going to talk about, okay, well, let's just talk about regular illness first and presenting with symptoms, and then we'll get to the positive test. All right, so every child, every day, is going to have a health screen completed at home. And we're going to give you an app. You're going to use the app to complete this screen. The app is really cool because it also is going to help us with arrival and dismissal, because it's going to be able to let us know when you're on campus, and that will help make arrival and dismissal really efficient as well. So, but the health screening will be done at home. Temperature screening's done at home. You send us, and then you click submit. For those parents like myself who would forget to do that for their children, for all their children every day, we're going to know which children need to have their temperature scanned, and we're going to be able to do that at the building. We can't do it for every child every day. There's just no way to get it done without eating into substantial portions of our instructional day. So testing, is testing mandatory, and will schools do any testing? No and no. So right now, there's no mandatory testing for kids, no mandatory testing for teachers. And I don't see schools ever doing testing, because we don't do any medical testing now, really. Like, we don't screen for strep, or we don't screen for whatever. I mean, you get the idea. We don't really actually test for very much, if anything. So I don't see that happening. So, but what happens if a child just isn't feeling well, and they're in their classroom? So what will happen is the teacher will call down to the nurse's office. The nurse will really do a teleconference, talk about symptoms. The child will then come down and go into our isolation room. And there's a parent there. I could probably think of another. Oh, it's called an illness room. Sorry. It's really not an isolation room, because I don't want you guys to think that your kid's all alone. But there will be an adult in there. And then we call you. And depending on the symptoms, you will most likely come back, have to come to school and transport your child home, and then you call your doctor. Now, the pediatricians are expecting an onslaught of phone calls as soon as school starts. And so they're probably going to say to you a variety of things. That's why they're trying to come up with a standard protocol. But they may do a telemedicine appointment. They may just ask you about the symptoms. They may say, you know what, just watch the child for another day or two. I mean, who knows what they'll say. But they'll give you an idea for the timeline to return to school, right? And they'll be the ones to recommend a test or not. And they know a lot more than I do about that. So, but let's say that they do recommend a test because your child is short of breath, or your child is spiking a fever and is coughing. Okay, so let's say you get the test and the test comes back positive. Next slide. There we go. So what happens if someone tests positive? Now, I know that many people think, oh, if you get one positive test, the entire building shuts down. And that is not the case, according to Dr. Mendoza. Right? But as soon as there's a positive test, the Department of Health is the lead agency. They're the ones that they really sort of take over, and we're their partner. So First they notify us probably within 60 minutes that there is a positive test. And it's important for us to know that because we have to help them with contact tracing. We have to let them know who was this child with, who are their teachers or teacher, and so on. And then they begin the whole contact tracing and phone calls and all that good stuff. They will determine who needs to be quarantined and for how long, right? So most likely it's 14 days. The most important piece is through contact tracing, they're the ones that determine who's been exposed. And this is where many of us have this misconception that, okay, I was in the same building as this person, so I've been exposed. And in many cases, that's probably not it. They define exposure, and Dr. Mendoza has been drilling this into the heads of all the superintendents because we meet with him every week. Exposure is more than 10 minutes with a person closer than 6 feet without a mask. Okay, so more than 10 minutes, closer than 6 feet without a mask. Those are the three things. So that's why it's like, oh, you know what, this child, yeah, you know what, they passed the hallway perhaps, but they really weren't exposed because they were all wearing their masks. That's why the masks are so important. That's why distancing is so important as well. But it's the Department of Health, the contact tracers that determine, all right, mom and dad, you're quarantined. All the kids are quarantined. The teacher, if it's at elementary school, the teacher, you're probably going to be quarantined as well, depending on how long that student was in your room. And most likely the entire pod of 11 kids, 10 kids, whatever, will probably be quarantined as well. So they determine the notification, DOH does. And then we most likely as a district will notify the district as we've had a positive case at Trader High School. We've had a positive case at Plank South. We can't share names. We can't share grade level because we're violating privacy and HIPAA laws. So with that in mind, many of you have asked, well, what's going to completely shut us down then? We're starting off in hybrid. What can cause all of us to go to remote? There are two scenarios. One, if we go above 9% for positivity. If we go above 9%, the governor's already said you're shut down. The other scenario is I'd probably have to shut us down. Instead of calling a snow day, I guess I'd call a COVID day. And it's because of absentee rates with faculty and bus drivers. So, and they may not be sick, but they might be quarantined, or they might have a cold and they don't want to come to school with their cold or their cough. So, those are the two scenarios that could shut us down. May not shut us down for very long, not like last time, but it could shut us down to remote days. Then the other question that we keep getting is, when do we go back to full-time school? When do we have 5 days a week, all of our kids, all day long? When do we get back to normalcy? So the key here is, and this is where I'm probably not going to make any of you happy, but the key here is the 6 foot requirement. As long as the 6 foot requirement is in place, we will be on hybrid because there's no way to get all of our kids in a safe way with the 6 foot requirement. Now, what can eliminate the 6 foot requirement? There are two things that can eliminate that. One is a 0% or near 0% infection rate, like what's happening in New Zealand right now. Okay? Right now, our infection rate, our positivity rate is 0.85 in our region. So we're close, but do I really expect us to get close to 0? Probably not, but who knows? The other thing that could eliminate the 6 foot rule and get us back to normal is the vaccine. The vaccine, and then we're all vaccinated, or many of us are vaccinated. So I do expect the vaccine to come out by Christmas time, and then it's all a matter of how fast can they distribute the doses and how many people get vaccinated. So in all probability, do I expect us to get out of this hybrid and go back to full-time in-person learning this year? No, I don't. I expect us to be in hybrid the entire year. And I would love to be pleasantly surprised, but I'd rather you expect this year to be the bridge year of hybrid or remote and then get pleasantly surprised if we have this great vaccine and all of us get vaccinated and we're back by March. But I just don't think that's very probable. So that does it for that theme. We're going to open it up to you. Use your raise the hand feature on Zoom, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Go ahead, Ms. Land.
First question is from Madison General.
Hi, Madison.
Hi, my name's actually Andrea Madison. It's my daughter.
Oh, okay.
I have two in elementary school. I'm just concerned about the everyday thing. So do you have any idea how long the turnaround times are for the COVID testing right now? Because if it's 24 hours, I mean, would that put them at risk for having a hard time doing the contact tracing? Would they be involved with more people because of the fact that they're every day?
So let me answer that one first. Yes, it's a 24 hours at best right now. Okay. However, that being said, there may very well be within the next few weeks another type of test that's a rapid test based on saliva that might be available to us as a community. There is already one pediatric urgent care here in Webster. It's off of Bay Road near Taco Bell. And it's run by Dr. Charno. Anyway, so she's a Webster parent. And so they already have a rapid test that's done in like 30 to 60 minutes, but they're the only pediatric practice right now that has access to that. So it's out there, but that's the key, Ms. General, because it makes contact tracing easier, obviously. And it's also, now how reliable is it? According to Dr. Charno, it's about 90% reliable. But we're hoping that is disseminated we're hoping that that type of test gets out to our entire community relatively fast. So, but you're right, right now it's 24 to 48 hours on a good time. I mean, it might actually even be longer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next.
Cheryl Sabin.
Hi, Cheryl.
Yeah, I gotta unmute myself. Hi, the 9%, is that per school or per district?
It's really regional. They won't do it per Webster district. It'll be a regional thing that'll shut our whole region down.
Oh, they'll shut down the whole region.
The whole
So
region.
our school could have I'm not saying it will. I'm saying our school could have a higher positive rate and still be open.
Most likely it won't be, because if we start having 3, 4, 5 positive tests across, many, many buildings, we'll most likely have to shut down for a while.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Cheryl. Next.
You're welcome.
Grab a drink of water. Just go ahead and say your question. I can hear you.
The screen name is Galaxy A20.
Hi, thank you. My son is going to be going into first grade, and my question is, I know that before all this started with sending kids home sick, if there is a child that comes in, doesn't have a fever, or their little test that they have to do in the beginning of the day, it doesn't have any markers, but they have a cough, they're seriously coughing, they have sniffles, their parent decided to send them to school. I'm not saying that will happen. Are they going to be sent home? Like, are they going to be monitoring this within each classroom to send kids home on need basis?
Yes. So most likely that child, if they're coming in especially with that cough, and it's a cough that, how there are some kids that cough all the time because they have asthma. I'm speaking from my experience as a state roads principal a long time ago. So there are kids that just cough. But let's say that this is a new symptom. They would we'd isolate that child, and if mom and dad refuse to come pick them up, we would deal with that, which, that happens every year. We have a couple parents that get a little quirky about coming by to pick up their child. But they would that child would be isolated.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Next.
Renita Dickinson, or Dixon, excuse me.
Hi, Renita.
Yep, we're here. Thanks. My wife and I, Renata and I, are here together.
Oh.
If in the, let's say, unlikely event a student tests positive, has to quarantine, or is out, will there be remote learning? And I apologize, Mr. Gamina, if you answered that earlier, but we just curious, if a student is out, they're hybrid, will there be remote learning while they're out?
So they won't go to the remote team. They won't become a remote student because that's like a totally different school. So we wouldn't transfer their school for them. But you'd be working with the teacher, with their current hybrid in-person teacher, and they'd help you sort of catch up or do some of the work. It would be similar to if they were just absent in a typical year. So you'd be working with the teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet. Next.
Amy.
We'll do 2 more.
Okay. Sure. Amy Peterson.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, I have a question about my son and daughter will be at Webster Schrader High School. And what is the plan for gathering in big spaces, like for lunch or for passing in the halls where you have a big group like that?
Hold on to that question, Amy, because we're about to answer it.
Awesome. Thank you.
The next theme, okay?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Last one, Miss Land.
Sure. The name is Larissa.
Hi, Larissa.
Hi. Well, add my question. I have another question. Once a vaccine comes out, is that going to be a mandatory shot? You want students to have to attend school?
So I don't know if it will be mandatory. That's not my call. It's actually the State Department of Health's call, whether or not to make it mandatory, like measles is mandatory and mumps and rubella.
Yeah.
But you also asked, would I want students to get vaccinated? Like personally, absolutely. So I am a huge proponent of vaccines because it just keeps us all safe. But I also understand that there are people who feel differently than I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll make it mandatory in the first year, but I would assume that eventually it would become a mandatory requirement in order to attend school.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
So let's move to our last theme. And don't worry if you don't get your question answered. We have the feedback form, and you can also email me your questions. So this one is about cleaning. This theme is around cleaning, distancing, and masking. So Amy, this is where your question is going to be answered around distancing, okay? So let's break this up into on the bus, in an elementary classroom, and in a secondary classroom. So on the bus, our buses are most likely, it says 50% there, but most likely it'll be like 25% filled. Because think about it, we're in a hybrid model, so we only have to transport 50% of our kids anyway. And then according to our survey, almost half of you are saying that you don't need transportation. So that if you do the math, it's like, oh, we're only going to have a quarter of our kids on the bus, which is awesome. That's that is really big for us because now we can use busing, transport 15 to 22 kids or whatever per bus. And they can each have their own seat. Siblings can sit together, by the way. You can have siblings sit together. They can have their own seat. They can be 6 feet apart. They're going to be with their face covering on. And we can actually hit all the high contact areas in between bus runs. That's not an issue. The buses will get, the more intense of a cleaning will happen at the end of the day. The kids can bring their hand sanitizer from home on the bus. That's not an issue. We have hand sanitizer ourselves from the state. That can't go on the bus for a variety of reasons. Some of you had asked, well, can you put plexiglass barriers up around the seats? We can't use plexiglass because plexiglass is flammable. So we can't have any plexiglass anywhere on our campuses or in our buses. And we also have to make sure that there are no visual barriers or obstacles to the bus driver, because that's just state law. So that's the bus. So let's transition now. They get off the bus and they walk into their elementary classroom. What's that going to look like? Well, you're probably going to have between 8 and 13 kids per class around there, okay? Probably no more than 13, if that. The masks, remember, they're only there for 2 hours. I would expect them to have their masks on the entire time. There can be a mask break if we know that they can be 6 feet apart. And that's up to the teacher. We can hit the high contact areas throughout the day repeatedly throughout the building. And the rooms themselves will be cleaned. The high contact areas will be cleaned in between the AM and the PM sessions. And we're going to do that because we're going to train everybody, including myself. I'm going to get trained. I will be cleaning between AM and PM. I'm going to go to a building and pick a room or a couple rooms and clean. So we're going to hit those areas every day between the AM and PM. And then at the end of the day, the building will be thoroughly cleaned like it normally is. So what products are we using? We're using something that's it's hydrogen peroxide based, and it's very, very safe. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cunningham because he's the expert on this. But hydrogen peroxide is probably one of the safest cleaning agents that you can use. Go ahead, Blaine. Tell him why.
Okay, thanks, Carm. Starting off, glad to report that for the last several years, we've been using a product that is hydrogen peroxide based for our bloodborne pathogens program here. This product is made from Diversity product. Like Carm was saying, it is a hydrogen peroxide based chemical, and it has a 1-minute kill claim in regards to the COVID disinfectant rate. So that was already on the CDC website and confirmed, even before this pandemic took place. So the good thing is our staff already is currently highly trained in the use of this product. Like I said, it's very safe. The material safety data sheet for the SDS portion of this which is safety for the component is a 0 on a 0 to 4 basis. Flammability is a 0, and then also combustibility is a 0. So part of picking our products years ago, we were real glad that this product was in our arsenal already, and we'll be moving forward with that product.
Great, thank you, Blaine. So what happens in a secondary or in a secondary school, secondary classroom? When we look at the secondary classroom on the next slide, middle school, high school, again, 8 to 13 kids, masks are on at all times. If there's an ability to take a break, they can, but it's at the discretion of the teacher. We'll be able to hit the high contact areas again repeatedly throughout the day. The desktops can be cleaned in between periods. Again, all hands on deck. Same solution that Blaine just described. At the end of the day, custodial staff goes through, hits all the rooms. And in terms of locker use, so we're going to let our kids know at middle and high schools that they can go to their lockers at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and at lunchtime. Those would be the 3 times that they can go to their lockers. This is going to be a change for most middle school students who tend to go to their lockers between almost every class. High school students, the majority of them don't even use their lockers anyway. So it won't be a big change for them, but for middle schoolers, it will be. So now walking in the hallways. So this goes to Ms. Peterson's question. So kids will be in the hallways. So luckily it's only half of them at once, right? Because we're on a hybrid schedule, so they won't be nearly as crowded. And we will have signage. We'll attempt to put some signage down on hallways so the kids sort of know, listen, you're walking on the right. No matter what, you're walking on the right in this direction, and try to stay 6 feet apart. Now, do I expect our students to always be 6 feet apart while in the hallway? Absolutely not. We know what kids are like. We know what, middle school boys, I'm lucky to get them 6 inches apart sometimes. So, but adults are in the hallway, and we'll be reminding them repeatedly, listen, this is not your typical year. So try to stay away from each other as best you can. And remember what exposure is. Exposure, as defined by Dr. Mendoza and CDC, is more than 10 minutes, less than 6 feet apart, without a mask on. So obviously in the hallways, we're probably not going to hit the 6 foot for the entire passing period. We won't hit that requirement, but we're less than 10 minutes and we will have our masks on. So those are good things. But the 6 foot piece with the hallways, I know that's going to be probably the toughest part for us. The cafeteria, I think Ms. Peterson also asked about cafeteria, and we're really lucky in the sense that we have enough space, it's certainly a Trader, that we can space our kids out 6 feet apart. It's going to be pretty lonely. They're going to basically be sitting by themselves. And at the middle school, same thing at Thomas as well. We'll be spreading the kids out. At both Spry with their new cafetorium, as well as at Willink, there are going to be 8 lunch periods instead of the typical 6. So each lunch period about 22, 23 minutes long. And because there are so many lunch periods, there are going to be very few kids in each lunch period. And so it will be easier to keep them distanced because they won't have their mask on while they're eating. So that's why that distance piece has to be there. And then there are adults obviously in the cafeteria to try to keep our kids away from each other, basically. So, all right. Is there one more, Aaron? Yes, the ventilation piece. So we're going to end on this slide, and then we'll open it up again for questions on this theme, and then that'll be it. So ventilation. We get we're getting some questions about airflow, air refresh rate. So our HVA system, luckily, is designed for airflow. It's not designed for comfort, okay? It's not designed to keep people cool. It's not designed, it's designed to refresh the air within a space as often as possible. So we refresh our air 4 to 12 times per hour. So let's just say an average about 8 minutes. Every 8 minutes, you have a complete new body of air. And that's good because, again, it's all around, let's get those droplets out of the way and let's continue to have that ventilation. I'm going to, again, turn it over to Blaine because he is the expert on this HVAC. And he'll be able to talk to you for a couple minutes on what we're doing and how good our system is. Go ahead, Blaine.
Thanks, Carm. So school districts in New York State, our units need to bring in outside air through damper systems. You might have heard Governor Cuomo state that malls had to go to a MERV 15 system. Our systems are a lot different, like I said, because that outside air that we need to bring in per code needs to refresh our classrooms. Our filters are rated at a MERV 8, and we have always had what we feel is some of the best filters in the market from Penfield. They're part of their Tools for Schools program that we've had in place for several years now in the district. We do have a preventative maintenance program that consistently change those out in terms of for their lifespan. And then we also do have an energy management system. That energy management system, we can monitor how much outside air is coming in through the dampers. We can monitor set point, and then we can also monitor total functionality. So if something would to go awry, that system sends out alarms to our HVAC specialist desktop, their laptops, and also their smartphones so that we can react accordingly.
Thanks, Blaine. Okay, so we're going to take the last 10 minutes and open it up to you for any questions that you may have regarding this theme. Go ahead, Ms. Land.
The first question is from iPhone 2.
iPhone 2, welcome.
Hi, so I was wondering, you worded the mask in the classroom differently on the elementary and on the secondary slides, and I'm wondering, it's a little confusing. Does that mean that it's up to the teachers in secondary whether the kids wear their masks in the classroom? It says at the discretion of the teacher. Or is that just that the teacher, like you said on the elementary slide, can take a break, can let them take a break, but they have to wear their masks?
It's the same. Expectations are the same no matter what. My piece was at the elementary level, the kids are only there for 2 hours and they can definitely wear a mask for 2 hours. I saw it done this year. It's in a summer camp for children with special needs. But yes, it would, I would, and most teachers actually, I don't know if I've met a teacher yet that's basically not saying my students are going to have their masks on at all times, because it's so hard when you're in a classroom to guarantee that the kids will always be at least 6 feet apart. Because if they're up and moving and doing classroom activities, you can't always guarantee that kids won't get closer together. So, but yeah, it's the same. Yeah, I got to look at that wording then. But great catch.
Okay, and then in the hallways, are they required to wear their masks when they're changing classes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And buses
Okay.
too. Yep.
Okay, and will they be participating in gym, in phys ed, the secondary kids, like
secondary,
changing
yep.
clothes, everything?
Maybe not changing clothes, but definitely PE classes will be given, and the PE teachers are now figuring out, okay, what can we do for PE? Because as we all know, if it's aerobic, the kids, are going to have to be 12 feet apart if they're breathing heavy and so on. But there are lots of things that PE teachers can do that still allows kids to get some movement in, and most likely again with their masks on. So.
Okay, so will you be able to let us know if they're going to be going in the locker room to change? Because that's a concern, I think.
Yes, we can let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next question is from Amy Zona.
Hi, Amy.
Sorry, just trying to unmute. Okay, so I have two. One is in middle school. You talked about that they can go to their locker, but only like lunch and in the morning. So they allowed like string backpacks before. Will they allow the regular backpacks because they're probably going to be carrying heavier?
Yes.
Okay.
Amy, you can send them with the biggest backpack you can find.
Well, the strings cut in a little bit, so I was just a little concerned about that. And in the cafeteria, will there be opportunities for before kids eat to wash their hands?
Yes, there will be hand sanitizer all around the schools. Different dispensers are all over the place at this point. Okay.
Will they be able to like actually go and wash them though?
Yes, they could do that too. Yep.
Just in a bathroom, is that
yes. Yep.
how that would work?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just one more question and this is with the filtration system.
Yep.
What those filtration systems, what I'm wondering is that particular grade of filtration, what does it filter out? Like,
yeah. So how big are the pores and what's the micron and all that good stuff? Go ahead, Blaine.
So what we will do is I'll put that up on the frequently asked questions in terms of the exact, it's not HEPA, but in terms of the exact micron, I can send that out and I'll put that on the frequently asked questions website that we have up and running. So the exact micron that it takes. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
You bet. Go ahead, Aaron.
Next question is from Josie.
Hi, Josie.
How are you?
Good.
I have kind of a two-part question about the mask breaks and some open air opportunities. So with the mask breaks, I understand that you said, if 6 foot distance is obtainable, but some of us are sending our kids to school with the assumption that they were going to have, that everybody would in fact be masked. It's kind of concerning that, okay, my kid may be in a classroom that's allowed mask breaks, my kid may not. And I'm wondering why they're not being held to like maybe open air opportunities. I'm just wondering, just because I'm thinking about the setup of a typical elementary classroom, and although their desks will be 6 feet apart, I mean, kids are leaning over, they're grabbing pencils.
So Josie, most likely and I wanted to keep it to teacher discretion because there are times where they may be outside but they're together outside, which means they still can't take their masks off. but they might be outside and they're really spread apart.
Okay.
It's up to the teacher during that outside time, because I would imagine that most of our teachers are going to want to get outside, especially during September, October.
Right.
Within a classroom, though, for those 2 hours, I would imagine that, they're not going to have a break, because they're, for the reasons that you're bringing up. For the reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, that being said, there's also a possibility that a teacher takes their child down to the cafeteria, which we're not going to be using our cafeteria like for lunch because our kids aren't there for long enough. But let's say that they go down there and they're doing an activity and they're 20 feet apart.
Right.
They may very well say, you know what, you could take a mask break now, because they're reading their books, they're doing independent reading, you're 20 feet apart. So I just wanted to be honest with everybody and say, yeah, it's up to our teachers to say, you know what, you're so far apart and you're not coming anywhere close to each other, so they can take a mask break then.
Now, will they also have the discretion, like I'm thinking about my kids at Playing South, and I know the windows don't have any screens on them. Will it be to the teacher's discretion to have those windows open and have natural air ventilating through?
Yeah, I mean, that's typical for any classroom at any time, even pre-COVID. But the great thing about, Playing South is air-cooled, which is great, unlike State Road. And but yeah, a teacher can, if they want to have their windows open, they can open them up. And that's typical no matter what year we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks, Josie. Another question?
It's from Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Carm. I was just curious if you were able to share with us how many kids have opted to go 100% remote at this point.
11.5%.
Thank you.
So 11.5 out of 8,400.
That's 631.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. 631. That's right, because we haven't had all 8,400 families get back to us yet.
And is elementary more likely or secondary or pretty even across the board?
Even across the board.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Lynn.
Next question.
Two more, Mrs. Land, two more.
Sure. The next one is from Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. My daughter's going to be entering kindergarten in the fall. And I guess my question is, not only just the safety part, but if they're expected to be seated 6 feet apart, which I think when we came the registration night, they were at tables that offered an opportunity for them to have some collaborative learning experiences. What type of attention will be given or planning will be given to not lose that site, just because, building those appropriate social skills are so critical in that age group?
So you cut out on me during your last sentence. You said,
"Oh, I'm sorry.
How can we make sure that they?" Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, how can we make sure that they are still getting collaborative learning experiences?
Okay, so I know that our kindergarten teachers are all over that, and because that's probably one of the most important pieces of kindergarten. It's probably one of the most important pieces of K-1-2. To tell you the truth, is the use of play and the use of groups in order to build social skills, but also the academic piece as well. So I don't think there's going to be, it's going to look different for sure, but I still think that the foundation or the crux of their learning plan will still be around that social piece. Because I'm sure many of you will probably agree that, listen, I'm not so worried about the academic piece. I really want my child to be with others to learn how to get along and how to take turns, how to talk to one another, how to be kind to one another. So I don't think we're going to be short shrift of that. But it will look different, but I know it's something that our kindergarten teachers are all over. That's why they're teaching kindergarten. They don't want to give that up.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Last question.
It's from A.D. Simonelli.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for all you folks are doing. I know you have a very complicated situation to piece together here.
Thank you.
Just a question. My son is in high school, and one of the most sensitive, I guess, areas here is really concept of how this will work during lunch in the cafeteria. I have visions. I know we're going to have reduced capacity, but I have visions of the high school and the crowding, and obviously they need to remove their masks. Are there going to be more periods where they can eat, or how is that going to be handled to make sure that we can maximize safety?
You bet. So, Mr. Weedor, are you on? So, Mr. Weedor is the principal of Thomas High School, and I thought he was on this call. Maybe he could answer specifically, and maybe not. So, oh, there he is.
He's going. Yep.
Sorry, can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering, for the high school, one of the biggest windows of vulnerability will obviously be when kids are going to eat lunch, the cafeterias and all. Understanding, you know, they're going to be mingling, they're going to need to remove their masks and all. I was just wondering how, what is the strategy there to try to make that as safe of an experience as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be the trickiest time of day. You're absolutely right. And, you know, it's not gonna be like going to a restaurant where you pick up your food or the food is brought. Once you arrive at your table at the restaurant, then you're able to remove your masks and act normal. We're gonna have to maintain that 6-foot space in our cafeterias. If you're familiar with Thomas, that's gonna be a little more difficult over here than it might be at Schrader, which has a very large space. We have a series of smaller spaces. So we're going to be using a lot of different areas of the school probably to make that work out for everyone, while also keeping it, knowing that lunch is also a very social time for kids. And we do want them also to be able to talk to people. You know, we don't want them sitting there in silence eating. So we're going to follow the guidelines. It's going to be tricky, but we're going to do the best we can do.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay.
I just didn't know if there'd be any consistency where students would be asked to kind of go to the same locations once they're identified, since there'll be so many. But yeah, I was thinking about—
Well, to be honest with you, having worked in a high school for 25 years, we never assign seats in the lunchroom, and they sit in the same seat every day.
Good point. Good point.
So, okay. Well, first, that ends today's meeting. I want to thank you all for spending, look at that, 75 minutes, almost on the nose, with us. And your feedback is really important. Remember that we're going to send you a feedback form in a moment, so you can fill that out. We'll try to get answers to you. We'll try to put them on the FAQ. You can email me personally. I can try to get back to you within 24 hours. You know, none of us chose what's going on here. This isn't the optimal world that we want to start school in 4 weeks. But I can't tell you how much we appreciate your flexibility, your patience, your kindness, your support. It does mean an awful lot to us. So again, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and have a great week.
Have a great day, everyone.